So Kenai and I would like to welcome you to Alone in Alaska YouTube channel. I'm Alone, and this is Kenai. And I'm going to get my morning fire started, and then we're going to go sit and have a little bit of a coffee chat as I introduce myself and the channel to you. See you in a few. Kenai and I would like to welcome you to Alone in Remote Alaska. Right? So I thought I'd tell you how I got to the point of moving to remote Alaska. Give you a little bit about my backstory. So when I was a kid, my family used to take these camping trips. We only did it when I was really little, but I fell in love with the idea of camping. I loved being out there, and I loved driving through these small towns and being up in that top window of the camper and just knowing that in the morning when we woke up, everything was going to look different than it did when we first arrived. And as I grew up and we were no longer going camping, I found myself enthralled by TV shows like Wild Wild West and Gunsmoke and Bonanza and things like that. You know, I'm in love with the idea of the Old West and everything that it had going on. And I know it wasn't all glory. I know that there was a lot of bad things that happened during the Old West, but I'm still in love with the idea of it. And to be honest with you, I'm a pretty tough cookie. Yeah, don't mess with me. Just saying. And I always wanted to be, you know, a character in one of those shows, or I wanted to just live that life. And I didn't really think that that was possible. You know, you wind up getting stuck in the life that is handed to you, and you forget that you can make your own way in life. And so, you know, as I grew up, I got married and had a family and was happily settled down raising my family, even though I did wind up getting a divorce. And my ex-husband and I are still great friends. And for that, I'm very thankful. But, you know, you do what you need to do to survive. And for me, that was working a full-time job, owning a business on top of that. In fact, I owned a couple of businesses on top of that. And I homeschooled my children. And years later, I find that my kids have grown and they've moved out. And now I'm living in a house in the middle of Denver suburbs that I don't really want to live in. Denver had grown over the last few years, had a major population boom, and you couldn't go anywhere without seeing somebody or bumping elbows with somebody or being stuck in traffic. It didn't matter whether it was a weekday or a weekend, you were stuck in traffic. And I just wasn't enjoying it. Every time I drive home, I think I am heading the wrong direction because of where I lived. I really wanted to be in the mountains. I really wanted to be near water. A few years before my kids had moved out, I started camping again. I took them camping on a few trips. Eventually, I started going camping by myself. I took up fishing. I learned to fly fish, and I just found myself out in nature more and more and more. But then 2020 happened, and I didn't feel comfortable going anywhere. And as I was going home one day, I just decided, that's it. I don't need to be here. There's nothing holding me here. I had no responsibilities, no obligations. I knew I could put my house on the market, and I knew that I could move wherever I wanted to. And I'd been looking for properties over the years in Colorado, and I'd looked for properties in Montana, Idaho, even northern Washington and Alaska. And then eventually I just decided I really wanted out of the lower 48. And Alaska was really where I wanted to be. I remember taking a family vacation and telling my parents as we were in Alaska that if ever I disappeared, to not look in Alaska, because this is exactly where I'd be. And lo and behold, here I am. And so I just think it's amazing to be here. I think it's beautiful. I think that this was the right decision. And especially because I'm an introvert. So it doesn't do me any injustice to not be around people or to not have the conveniences of restaurants and stores at my beck and call. Because I don't like shopping. I don't really like to go out to eat. And I much prefer Kenai's company over crowds or the nightlife. I know a lot of people are worried that I'm going to get bored or lonely out here in the remote Alaska. But boredom is not a word in my vocabulary. And I personally like a good game of solitaire. What do you think? Did I make the right move? I've got Kenai to keep me company. I've got these amazing windows where I can watch the changing seasons and lay underneath them at night and watch the night sky and the aurora borealis. Watching the wildlife. The amazing mountain range and the ever-changing view. And there is so much to explore in remote Alaska. I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. I don't think I'll ever get bored or grow out of that. Now that I've introduced myself and told you a little bit about my backstory, I'd like to welcome you to follow along on my adventures here alone in remote Alaska. But I don't want to just show you my adventures. I want to show you remote Alaska for what it is. I want to show you the others who live alone in remote Alaska, whether it's a community alone and separate from all the other communities, or it's an individual and their story of being alone in remote Alaska. I'd also like to show you how I adapt my recipes to cook on a wood burner. I don't have a stove in my cabin or an oven, so everything I do is off the grid as far as cooking and refrigeration, laundry, bathing, all of that is off the grid. Yes, I have electricity, but the only thing the electricity does is charge my phone, turn on the lights, and provide internet service for me. It doesn't do much else than that. So come along. I'm going to show you all this and more. And I thank you for watching today, and happy holidays.